All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Through a Therapist's Eyes. I am still Chris Gazdick, a mental health and substance abuse therapist with that book out, Re-Understanding Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. We welcome self. That sounded like a southern slang. Be quiet because we want to hear his voice the first time for the right time. I guess I'll do it now. Mr. Craig Graves, the one, the only, the myth, the legend, is back on Through a Therapist's Eyes. How did that go?
It's pretty good.
Is that pretty all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's back, y'all.
Keep working it.
At least a little bit. More on that in a second. This is a podcast where you get personal insights directly from a therapist in your own home and personal insights in your own car. It's not the delivery of therapy services in any way. We love. Thank you guys for subscribing, hitting the 5-star buttons and the comments and all that kind of stuff. And we get good interaction now with contact at throughatherapist'seyes.com, the website throughatherapist'seyes.com. There's another cool website to mention today. What is this thing, man? Like a wininyourmind.org?
Yeah. Com. Yeah, wininyourmind.com.
So I got to do this like formal thing with like a guest co-host. This is weird for me because we did so many shows. If you're tuning into this one, this is Craig Graves. He was the co-host for like a year and a half, I think.
Yeah.
We did the show together.
Right.
He's doing some coaching stuff, and he's come back to kind of take the same role as some of the other co-hosts and stuff that we have. But he's only going to be doing 2 a week or 2 a month for his month when he's on. But you do the coaching stuff, so I gotta like make sure we get the website and the phone number. And dude, we're international around. As a matter of fact, we have a new country like China's got like
China.
Yeah, dude. The way it works is maybe it's only a couple people, but we got a lot of downloads in China and Japan now has found us. I mean, it's catching a real international flavor, and I think that with your coaching, services and everything, I mean, you could do international, right?
I could,
yeah.
So, and I know some people in international.
So catch us up, man. What are you doing these days? Where can they contact you?
Yeah, wininyourmind.com, like you said, and doing some coaching one-on-one and working on some group projects that I'm really excited about. And so things are going well, Chris.
That is sweet. They got a phone number?
Yeah, my phone number's on the website. Yeah.
What is it?
I'm not going to say it out
Oh,
here.
you don't want to say it on there?
Wininyourmind.com. My email's there. My phone number's there. My social platforms are there. So, if you want to connect, then that'd be the place to go.
Yeah, because he's really, I mean, y'all really to speak him up a little bit. I mean, I told you doing this show for a year and a half, you'd learn a lot about mental health. And
I did. It was a great experience.
I'll give you the compliment. We were talking in our mastermind group the other day, and I just started chuckling to myself because I forget what we were talking about, but you were talking about these questions that you would ask people, and as you're coaching with people, this, what does that mean to you, and you remember I started laughing, I think out loud.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
yeah,
okay, Craig, you realize like these are therapy questions, and what we do.
Yeah, there's some parallels, right? Yeah,
it really is.
There definitely
really
are. Yeah.
It was just cool because guys, he's learned for a year and a half a lot of mental health strategies and tips and things. I mean, doing this show and talking about it, you can't help but not. And now you've transitioned over into doing some Unbeatable Mind coaching. I'm sure you're going to help a lot of people, man. It's
having
really
a
cool.
lot of fun with it, man. It's been good.
And that's, I guess, what we're talking about tonight, I guess, right?
Yeah. Kind of some of the foundational stuff that led me down this path I'm on. Really.
What did we title this? Is an unbeatable mind coachable, or what did we title it?
Well, I was going to talk about the big 4 skills of mental toughness, and I kind of mental toughness is kind of a buzzword these days. But these are 4 skills that really anybody can use to kind of manage their mindset in just about any kind of situation.
But I guess my point is, and then we'll launch into it. Seriously, what did we title it? Do you recall?
I think we titled it, is mental toughness a skill, or mental toughness is a skill?
Neil, what did we title this thing? We got to grab the mic. We just did that off the cuff right before the mics came.
I think I got, is mental toughness a skill that can be learned?
That's what it was. A skill
sound
that
good
can
to you,
be
Craig?
learned.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
And the point there is that's really cool for our audience and everybody to listen to is, and I know you're going to talk about it when you kind of figure out what brought you into this. I mean, dude, these things really are learned strategies, and I'll tell you off the cuff where my interest went with this and why I was so interested and encouraged you so much to get into the coaching with it, because there was actually documentary or something that I was watching, and it was on Navy SEALs, and the show was documenting where probably only like 25% of the candidates that are in SEAL training actually graduate, and they wanted to increase it.
Yeah.
I think it was actually wartime. It might have been when terrorism was kind of coming up and we needed to get more people, and they really wanted to increase their graduation rate without decreasing really the requirements and the toughness that's required to graduate.
Yeah.
And they increased it up to 33%. I don't know if you know that.
No, I did not know that. I have not heard that.
And they specifically talked about very specific parts of the brain that they began to work out in an emotional way that increased that grad. Now, it might not sound like a lot, y'all, but 25% to 33% is a lot of candidates, because there are not a lot of people that could become a Navy SEAL person. A lot of candidates that fail. They drop out. They don't make it to the end. And later on, at a conference that I was at for CEU training, that same documentary came up.
I'd be interested to see that one, because the number I've heard forever is about 15% make it through.
Yeah.
So, 25% sounds a little bit
Sounds
high.
like a lot. Well,
Yeah.
I forget numbers. It may have been that they increased it to 25%, but I remember 33%. I think I remember that right. But
I'm not sure about that,
doesn't
but I do
matter.
know it's about 15% make it,
yeah, if you got 100 people, 70 people are bailing. That's the deal.
Yeah, yeah, and
Essentially.
that's the thing that caught my attention about these guys many years ago. So when I was a young man, a kid, I wanted to be like my dad, right? And my dad was in the Navy, and my dad talked about how much he loved the Navy and all that stuff, and I decided I would join the Navy when I grew up. And I don't know where or why or when. I think I have an idea, but at some point I found out about these Navy SEAL commandos, and you're a little kid, you're like, it's commandos,
Loved it.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff, right?
Yeah, all day.
And, for me, I never really thought I wanted to be a Navy SEAL or anything like that. I'm not one of those wannabe guys. But that number fascinated me, man. I'm like, what makes these guys special? Well, how can they get through this grueling training when so many can't? And, the first thing you think of is what? What do you think? They're just stronger, right? They're in better shape.
Tougher.
Yeah, they're just in better shape. They're stronger. But, from what I understand, Division I athletes and NFL players, those guys that, quit, and then some guy that's never swam in a swimming pool, who's 115 pounds soaking wet, he manages to get through. So there's really, it's not really a physical thing. Turns out it's a mindset thing.
Say that again. Navy SEALs are not really a physical thing. It's a
the ability to get through the training is not. You have to be in shape, right? I'm not discounting that.
Right.
But you might say the strongest guys get through and the weaker ones don't, and that's not necessarily the case. It's the guys who are strongest in the mind that get through.
And I think the applicability, honestly, to that, which I know you use in your coaching, we'll go through some of it today. I anticipate. Man, we all use that most all the time. Can I make that bold statement?
Use what?
The skills that Navy SEALs use to get through Navy SEAL training.
I don't know if we do or not. We'll talk about what those four are.
Well, we can.
We can. Oh,
We
yeah,
should
yeah.
And when you look at cognitive therapy and breathing techniques, which I know is part of your four, and these different things. I mean, my point is that we all need them if we're going to cope well,
right?
With life.
Yeah.
I mean, Navy SEALs are one thing, but I just want our audience to understand, like, these are things that we're talking about are not going to be used only on a beach in an ocean trying to push boats up above your head and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
They can be used really in any situation. I use these four skills to help my daughter paint her bedroom. Because I'm going to tell you, Chris, thinking about painting a bedroom, dude, that even now that just makes me tense, right?
Really?
Yeah, I just don't,
I love painting.
You got to tape trim and all that stuff, and you might get some on the ceiling or on the carpet, and it just, I just rather pay somebody to do that and be done with
Would you
it.
believe when I paint, I don't use tape?
Well,
Dude, I just cut it, man. You just cut it right in.
well, I'm not that good. I'm not that good at it, But she wanted to do this, right?
Right.
And so we did it, and it was a great experience. But I use these big four skills.
Gotcha.
So you might think, you learn big four skills so you can be a badass, and that's not really necessarily true. You might learn these big four skills and become a better parent,
better husband,
or a better friend,
better business partner.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Exactly.
that's the big point.
Yeah, right.
So, by the way, audience, this is the second co-host. I don't know that it'll be a theme, but we had Casey on, Craig, and she's a therapist in here, and I relinquished the show prep. So you're the second person that has just got the show prep. So I'm in a following role here. So I'm enjoying the switch after done the show with you for so long, man. This is really cool for me.
Yeah. We'll
pretty neat.
We'll see how it goes, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I know you want to queue up with a question of what got you into this. You were talking about that a little bit.
Yeah, so that kind of led up to it, right? And so I started reading a bunch of books about these guys. And I was reading books about these guys before they got popular, with the war on terror and whatnot. And I remember I was on my way to a Christmas party in, I think it was 2013. And I had a cousin who was 21 years old. And I'm like, I didn't get him a gift, And so I swung into Books A Million. And I'm looking through the books there, and I saw this book called The Way of the SEAL by this retired Navy SEAL commander, Mark Devine.
Yeah.
And I just assumed it would be like the rest of the books I had read about blowing stuff up and, all that, Bud stories and SEAL training stories and stuff like that. But it was different. And it was, the point he was making in this book, I thought this mental toughness or whatever you want to call it, that these guys have were something that was inherent, that you just had it or you didn't. And it turns out he was in the book, he was saying, hey, these are teachable things. These are skills you can learn, and here's what they are,
Mm-hmm.
And even at that point in my life, Chris, I was kind of a personal development junkie, self-help books and stuff like that. Yeah, believe it or not. It's hard to believe, right?
It is.
And so I'm like, wow, I'm going to have to grab myself a copy of this thing, see what this is all about. Because if I can learn what this guy's teaching, then I can get better at the things that I'm doing by implementing these skills.
Just yourself.
Yeah. So just on a personal level. And so that kind of got me into it. And it turns out there's also a physical component to it. And so
That's when you started doing a lot of burpees.
That's kind of probably about the point I changed my workout routine from just lifting weights to a more functional kind of routine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So there was a switch from
I would say that
things
was
people think about with weightlifting or running.
Because
or whatever
as you train these mindset skills, man, you want to put yourself in tough situations.
Oh, interesting.
And doing burpees, that's a tough situation, right?
I hate
Yeah.
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 Terrible.
Yeah.
But the worst thing is a freaking ice bath.
Yeah, that's
You got to go with the ice bath. Is that what you're talking about?
We'll talk about crucibles later in the conversation,
It's
I
coming.
guess. But yeah. So you talked about the Navy wanting to increase the success rate, and
Right.
Mark teaches these skills through his company. As a matter of fact, that's how he started his company. Is he was teaching these skills to guys who were going through selection. And the SEALs have a 15% success rate, but the guys who go take this training from Mark have a 90% success rate of going through BUDS.
That's totally crazy.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's totally crazy.
Yeah. So he's got two companies. SEAL Fit is one of them, and Unbeatable Mind is the other. And Unbeatable Mind's where I got my coaching certification. But he started doing these physical events that stimulate some of the training they do. And he said the first time he did it, he had 8 guys who were going off to BUDS. The second time he did it, he had a businessman show up. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And the guy's like, "Well, I just wanted to challenge myself, see if I had what it takes." The next time he did it, he had three guys, who were civilians. And so then he realized he had a market for civilians too. So that's what got him started down his path, if you will.
That's cool. Yeah, and just to make that point, again, we were playing around with the numbers. I thought it was something like 25 to 33 increase. You're saying 15% to, this guy's group. Now, this doesn't mean everybody that went to SEAL training, 90% of them graduated. That means 90% of the people that took this information and had that ingrained in their process, then turned around and 90% of them graduated their class. That's incredible. I mean, I just want people to understand, that's a big deal.
Right.
That says there's something clearly different that this guy pulled together, and I'm going to submit to you, it comes right, whether you realize it or not, from a mental health perspective.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a crazy, bold statement?
It's pretty accurate.
You know?
Yeah. And these big four skills that we're talking about today, they aren't the only thing. This is a piece of it, right? There's more to the overall program, like finding a purpose. If it turns out your purpose is not to be that, then you're likely going to fail even if you're using these skills. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what are we doing today? We're doing just a sort of an overview.
Yeah,
Is that what
we'll
we
do
wanna
kind of
try
an
to do?
overview of that.
So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
just want
yeah.
to do the overview of the 4, and then more to come, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see what happens next time.
Okay.
Maybe go in a different
Yeah,
direction.
in a couple of weeks, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what are the big 4?
So the big 4 is obviously what? I'm going to let you guess.
I forget, man.
What?
You can't catch me cold like that, man.
Neil, what's the first one?
Wait a minute.
This is
I'm
a
gonna
test.
I'm going to try. But the whole turnaround thing I'm finding sucks, Craig. Remember how you got tired of me, asking you, what do you think of da-da-da-da-da?
Oh, yeah, when you put me on the spot?
That's right. That's what I was just trying to get you.
Yeah, it kind of sucks, right?
Yeah, it does. It sucks. The big 4 of mental toughness. Well, I am totally blind, honestly. I forget the thing. It'll come right back to me. But I know there's things like breathing.
There you go. That's it. Yeah.
The physical part of that and the intensity that creates. It's a huge thing. Let me see what other I can get.
Well, that's it, though. That's the answer.
That's one.
Breathing is the first.
Yeah, that's one.
The big 4.
But the second one I want to say, is it not about interdiction of thoughts and going through, or is that a specific
You're
skill?
close. Yeah, interdiction's part of it.
Part
but
of
it's
the second
it's
one?
positivity, changing your frame of mind from negative to a more productive or positive mindset.
So the second one is positivity?
Yeah, positivity. And interdiction is part of that.
Right, okay.
Right?
And that's totally, by the way, now, totally cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do.
Well, when we did that cognitive behavioral therapy show,
Remember that?
I was
Yeah.
fascinated because there were so many parallels.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the same stuff, honestly.
Yeah.
To a large extent. And then the other 2, I'm struggling now with the other 2. What's the other 2?
Visualization was number 3,
Okay, yeah.
and then micro goals was the 4th one.
Micro. Okay.
Micro goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So the breath practice is where we start. And if you took anything from the conversation today, the breath practice has got to be it. You can change your life just by implementing a breath practice and breathing properly. And I heard you and Casey talking about mindfulness on the show. That was
you heard
that
that?
was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was good. So really, what we do there, Chris, is when we do the breath practice, we're really trying to develop what we call a witness, and that's being able to kind of sit back and watch your thoughts play out like they're playing out on a movie screen. So it's almost like you're above your thoughts. So when your thoughts happen, you can say, "That's an interesting thought. What am I going to do with that thought?" And you can either let it go or you can explore it. But you just kind of see what that thought looks like and what it is. And the way that works is if you're thinking negatively, right? Then that gives you the opportunity to change those thoughts.
okay, I'm super excited about that. I'm going
Okay.
to tell you why.
All right, let's hear it.
I think you do check out our shows. We just got it out Monday. Did you?
I hadn't heard that one. I hadn't heard the latest.
Dude, it's a really good one. I think that you'll really enjoy it. I honestly listened to it a couple of times because I think it was one of our better shows.
And that was with Courtney?
It was with Courtney.
Okay.
And it was all about automatic thoughts. Something in cognitive behavioral therapy we call core beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And it's all of these automatic thoughts that happen from total assumptions that your psychological, emotional system just knows to be true. And it happens in childhood or more dramatic or bigger life circumstances. I actually added a component that I think you would be really good as a coach to know and understand the biological aspects of anxiety and depression and things like that also drive our automatic thoughts. But the whole thing about it is you really don't even know that those thoughts are going on. Like it's so consumed, it's so ingrained. And so when you're being purposeful about breathing and you're being purposeful about looking at that movie screen, what we talked about last week can be exemplified by what it is that you're talking about.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does.
I mean, it's a huge, big connection to help people be able to do something that I made a big point last week of being so difficult to do.
Yeah.
It is really, really hard.
Yeah, I normally talk about this in the positivity piece, but depending on who you listen to, we have between 50 and 90,000 thoughts per day.
Right.
And like 95% of those, Chris, are just continuous loops. We're just continuously looping through the same thought
Absolutely.
process, right? And so and most people aren't even aware they're doing that. And being able to control the breath and see what's going on in our minds gives us the opportunity to change those loops. And that's really kind of the goal there.
You know, it's funny. We talked about the reality of going into core belief work or challenging. The title of the show last week was challenging your life assumptions. I kind of landed on, you really need a safe environment. You need an objective, third party a lot of times, because it's so hard to really identify what it is that your whole emotional system has assumed. I mean, for 45 years, you know this to be true in your inner spirit. Well, think about it. What just occurred to me, when you're doing deep breathing and you're really setting yourself into a space and you're really examining your thoughts like you just said, and you're putting your thoughts like on a movie screen with this process, that is an emotionally safe space.
Absolutely.
Where you yourself become objective about what it is that you're doing. So I hadn't really thought about the work we described last week can be combined with what you're describing right now to get a lot of those aha moments in life people crave.
Yeah. I haven't heard that show, but you're 100% right. And so like what I've done and what I do and what I recommend people do is, if you're going to do a breathing practice, if you're going to implement a breathing practice into your life, find a space in your home where you can dedicate to kind of doing that. And it don't have to be anything big. I had my stepfather made me a meditation bench. So I got one of those benches, right?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And I've got it set up at the foot of my bed on the other side, the side I don't sleep on, by the window. And that's my space, man. It sits there, and there's a little pillow for my knees, Sometimes I'll light a candle and, get really, really wacky. But that's my, you called it a safe space.
Yeah.
I think those are weird terms, but that's my space, man.
Yeah.
And that's, and so that's where I do my breathing.
Even for religious folks and stuff that have that as a big part of their life, they talk about a prayer room. Or a war room with prayer.
Yeah.
This is a meditation space. This is a bench on in your bedroom.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I would want it to be outside. I've got a space in the outside that I go down in my house and yard in the woods.
Yeah.
It's my kind of bubble.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought the religion part up too, because a lot of people say, "Oh, that's just Eastern religion stuff. That's I can't do that because that's against my religious beliefs." It's really not. We're not talking about. I had a guy one time that I worked with, and he said, sitting down and clearing your mind is a bad thing. That gives demonic presences the opportunity to come into your mind.
Oh,
your mind's clear.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're not really clearing your mind. You're bringing your attention to your breath and focusing on the breath and trying to concentrate on that. And then you know what's going to happen, right? You're going to start thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And when those thoughts come up, what are they?
Right.
And if it's something that keeps repeating, then maybe that's something you need to do a little deeper work on. And it could be with your therapist. I mean, you might.
Here's another big corollary here, right? Actually, somewhat recently in my career, it's dawned on me. I guess I'm slow on the uptake. I've been doing it since '95 and whatever. But the reality here is that people are afraid of this work. They get intimidated by this sort of thing because they got to dig deep. Go deep down into myself and figure out what's really in me, and all this intense work needs to happen. And you know what? That is just not true. Like, I want to blow that stigma up. So here's the stereotype that we want to blow up. If you want to understand what's kind of going on with you, all you have to do is let it come up.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything.
No.
You clear your mind, and the big important things rise to the surface if you let them.
Yeah.
So you have to actually stop putting so much effort in pushing things down.
Yeah.
Doing these practices and breathing just allows the important stuff to come up, and you'll see it repeating. Absolutely.
Yeah, it does.
And then you can do the rest.
Yeah, you can keep a little journal by your meditation space or your breathing space,
It's a big
if
deal.
you want to call it that. And when you have these thoughts that keep arising, just write those things down.
Yeah.
You
Because they're important.
Absolutely.
Like, your spirit, your essence has assumed these things are just true.
Yeah.
And if you listen,
they're at that subconscious level.
You'll hear 'em.
I'm sure maybe you and Courtney talked about that, but the
Yeah.
subconscious gets
Oh, yeah.
programmed,
Oh, yeah.
by years of whatever.
Yes.
And that's you come to believe those things, right?
it's right on point.
Yeah, yeah. So before we go too much further, You know, when I talk about breathing, I'm talking about a proper breath because everybody breathes, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, everybody
Yeah,
breathes.
okay, yeah.
But most people, man, are breathing into the top part of their chest. They're not taking a full diaphragmatic breath. You know, they're not using their diaphragm.
Right.
And a lot of folks breathe too many times per minute, and that can be an issue too. So a proper breath is through the nose. The mouth is for eating and drinking and speaking. The nose is for breathing, right?
Right.
So we breathe down into our bellies. If you put your hand on your stomach and take a deep nostril breath down into the belly, so your belly should come out. And we call it a 3-part breath. The second part of that is your rib cage in the middle should begin to expand. And then the third part of it is to fill up the top of the chest here. And then when you exhale through the nose, you go in reverse. You empty out the top, the middle, and the bottom. And then that hand on the belly will come in toward the spine.
We did that in our group when you were kind of going through some of your presentations and stuff.
We did.
And actually, I'll be honest with you. You corrected a. Well, I guess I'm a nose breather. Yeah, no. Actually, you know what's funny? I think in a lot of my circles, the therapy world, we purposely teach mouth breathing.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
right?
interesting.
I think so.
That's
yeah.
interesting.
Because people will talk about breathe in, and take a big deep breath, and you can't do that with your nose because so they do it with your mouth, and then you purse your lips and blow out like you're blowing a balloon. And I did not realize that till this moment, that it's not in the mental health field, I don't think, pointed out with the nose. Because I've always thought, look, I'm a nose breather. I don't care how you tell me to do it. I'm going to breathe in like I normally do and breathe out like I normally do. And that works for me with breathing. But dadgum, yeah. People are taught to do it with their mouth.
I'm not totally sure, but I do know that we only get nitrous oxide from the nose, right? And nitrous oxide has all kinds of benefits, man. It helps fight viruses, and it enhances our sexual life. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that nitrous oxide does. We don't get that through the mouth.
Really?
And there's also some, the vagus nerve is stimulated through deep breathing. I don't think that happens through the mouth either. I could be wrong on that, but
this comes from that
the
book.
proper
you read,
breath is the proper breath is definitely through the nose.
Just so y'all know, he read this crazy big book that was weird science stuff about nose breathing. I know you did. And
that one was called Breath by James Nestor. That's a good book too.
It's
that's
cool.
very interesting.
Yeah.
But back to the breathing practice. So we do a box breath. So we breathe in for a set number of seconds. Let's say 5, for example, and then we hold for 5, exhale to a 5 count, and hold at the bottom for 5.
That last hold usually forgotten.
That last hold can be tough too.
Yeah.
That can be tough for people.
I gotta breathe again.
So whatever it is, start enough to where you can handle it without being triggered.
Yeah.
And so I do this practice for 20 minutes. The first 5 minutes is just basically a arousal control, just relaxing, right? The second part of that, the second 5 minutes, is what Casey talked about with the box.
Yeah.
So I'm visualizing the box, and that helps concentration. It improves our concentration. The third part of it is just mindfulness, just seeing what comes up. What are those thoughts that are coming up and continue to come up? And then the fourth part of that, Chris, is a visualization practice, which we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But that's what the box breathing practice looks like.
Yeah, I'm aware of time. We better go to the visualization. That's a good segue.
Okay, good. Well, let's jump right quick to positivity.
Oh, we missed one.
Yeah, we did.
Gotcha.
So once we begin to develop that witness, then we can begin to start seeing those thoughts. And when we have thoughts that don't serve us, then the positivity piece gives us the opportunity to move those thoughts to a positive place. So when we realize we're thinking negatively, then we interdict. And this process is called WIRM, W-I-R-M. So we witness, we interdict with a power statement. Stop, not now, not today, whatever works for you.
Right.
Then we redirect with some kind of a positive statement, I got this. And then we maintain that positive state with some kind of a jingle or a mantra, right? Day after day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. And that moves us from that negative state back into a more positive state of mind.
Yeah, so when we were talking last week about actions, I listed out a brainstorm of things that people can do really to purposeful change those negative thinkings that we just ramble on in our head. This is an example of kind of one of the several things that you're purposeful.
Yeah.
Because that's not an automatic process.
It's not.
So the point that I'm making is that when you have these automatic things that you begin to identify, don't have to dig deep to find them. You just have to let them come up, let them arise, stop compressing them, and then you're purposeful in doing what you're doing, right? Doing what you're describing to take action in creating different thoughts. I mean, dude, guys, that is huge.
It really is.
If you're going to try to be successful in an action.
It really is. And you know, Chris, that this is where that breathing practice really comes into play, because you have to be able to witness first, and really working on your breath practice is going to help you develop that witness. You know, and I see that in my own life. I have a guy that tells a story. It's a great story, and I put a video on my YouTube channel about it this week. But you know, when we start the work, it's like a guy's walking down the street and he falls in a hole. You know.
Okay.
The next day, he's going down the same street. He sees the hole, but he still falls in it. The third day, he's walking down the street. He sees the hole, and he goes around it.
Okay.
And the fourth day, he just takes a different route. You know. So the moral of that is, when we you know, before we start this work, we just fall in the hole. We just react immediately. Well, then we get to a point where we can see it, but we can't control our reaction. We can't control our emotion. So we still react. We still fall in the hole. Then we begin to see it, and we can change our reaction. And then finally, we're just not triggered by it at all.
Do you know what you just described?
What's that?
You may not realize this, but I know that your head's gonna, pop off. Y'all on Facebook, you can go to the YouTube and you can see this recording, because we're getting them up now on YouTube, the live shows. So watch Craig's head and his eyes right now, because what you just described is exactly what we're trying to do in emotion-focused therapy. Right? Y'all see his head?
Yes.
Right? Look at him.
Yeah,
I knew that would trigger you
100%.
to really realize
Yeah.
that, because let me make this applicable, and check out episode 11 and 101, and we've talked about marriage on here, but applicable in the emotional world is exactly what you just described.
Yeah.
You have an automatic process that you get into when you are in an argument with your spouse.
Right.
We know this. And on the show, you've learned, it's from an abandonment perspective or an engulfment perspective. Engulfment people do what they do. Abandonment people do what they do. They're patterns that you get into, and you fall into the hole. And not just once or twice. You'll fall into the hole over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Until finally you really begin to figure out, like you're describing, wait a minute, let me walk around that hole.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately, as you get better at dealing with conflict in your marriage and understanding the emotions that just rip out of you. I mean, that's why we act so badly when we're in a battle with our spouse. It's terrible the way that we sound. Mm-hmm. And you know that. You've heard yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking to the audience. Like, you've heard yourself. And then you get to the point, I love the way you just said it, where you don't even get triggered.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow. That's emotion-focused therapy.
Yeah, it is. And it does take work and patience, right? Because it's a slow process.
And I'm also going to add that I've always said with EFT, and I'm curious what you think about this with this process, to make it a little bit realistic. Like, you're not going to be able to get to a place where you don't get triggered. I mean, I love the story. I'm just kind of going and speaking out of the other side of my mouth a little bit, because realistically, there's so many things that do get us triggered. But the better off that we can catch that hole before we get into that hole, the better off we're going to be. It's just so difficult to not be.
Yeah, Chris, I think you're probably, I look at it situationally.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say your kid spills her milk on the floor, and you've done none of this. You have no idea what's going on, and you're just not there. You immediately get mad, right?
Yep.
God dang it, why you spill your milk? Blah blah blah. Then then you do some of this work. She spills her milk, and you shouldn't say anything, but you still do. Oh, what'd you spill your milk for, my God?
Did it again.
And then there's a point where, the milk gets spilled and you're like, okay, it's cool. I'll clean it up. And then finally it's like, she spilled her milk. Who cares?
Right. And by now, because this has been a year or two, honestly, it might be milk turned to lemonade.
Yeah, right.
And the reason why I'm saying that way is because it's a journey a little bit.
Yeah.
This is something that you're working at. Now, you've been doing this for how many years?
For a long time,
Right?
yeah. But another thing I would say with that example is maybe the milk thing, I just don't care anymore. But maybe I get cut off in traffic and I still get pissed for some reason.
Right.
So it's situational, I think, in some cases too. At least that's my experience.
Yeah, and the goal is to generalize those skills.
Yeah.
Because if you get really good at dealing with your child and parenting, then you might be better at dealing with the same sort of triggered states at work.
Right.
Because that goes with you,
Yeah.
certainly in marriage, and then in various places where you
Right.
might get stressed out or whatever.
And you know what else, Chris? Everybody has a bad day. So something that, doesn't bother me today may irritate me tomorrow, But the point is to hang in there and be patient with yourself.
Right.
Have some grace.
Grace is a good word.
Yeah, some grace, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the worm in a nutshell. So you witness, interdict, redirect, and maintain. And so visualization, once you get to the point where you're maintaining, then you visualize yourself where you want to be. If I want to be a good parent and my kid spills the milk and I go through that worm process, one of the things I can do at the end of that is to visualize myself loving my child and being a good dad and cleaning up the milk, And so I keep that visual thing in my head, and that motivates me to continue down that same path.
So we've gone to the third already? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So these are working together.
They do work on each other, and they can also work independently. We talked about the breath practice, right? Being an individual thing, but it's also combined together with the worm, if you will. So when you can redirect that, and you can use visualization. I mentioned using that as part of my breathing practice. So I'm visualizing myself being successful and meeting my goals, and I might visualize myself before an event. I might visualize myself coming in here and doing this podcast with you, and it all going well and me saying the things I want to say.
Well, let's come back to the visualization for a second, in a second. And I think I want to make the point that, anytime you're talking about skills, I mean, to me, like I do skills in therapy and, and whatnot. To me, that's almost the easy part, because you can list skills and then talk about using them and understand them cognitively in your brain. But let's talk about it a minute, if you're willing to take a little detour.
Absolutely.
On the difficulty of this, right? Like, how easy is it to pick up a new skill, right? Like, if you think about it, I understand your breathing descriptions and stuff, because I played band in high school. I was a trumpet player. That was the type of thing that I got into. So I understand the diaphragm. I understand that you need enough breath to blow the trumpet and what that process is like. And my nose, maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm a nose breather, because my mouthpiece was on when I needed that breath and all of that stuff, right? So but I tell you what, you know how good of a trumpet player I was when I started?
Probably terrible.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Actually, I never really got good at that skill, but I did all right. But by the time I was in high school, I had been doing this for 6 years.
Yeah, pretty good, right?
You're going to get better.
Yeah.
But when you first start out of it, I mean, boop, 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 boop. Yeah, I didn't have enough breath. I mean, the sound was awful. My armature, in my face couldn't handle the pressure that's needed for the trumpet. I mean, there's a lot there, is my point.
Yeah.
And this is going to be very, very stressful.
Right.
And I think people give up very quickly.
I'm glad you came back to that, because I don't recommend anybody sit down cold and start doing 20 minutes of breathing, because you're going to quit. You're going to quit right away. So start where you are. Start with 5 minutes.
2.
If 5's too much, move down to 3 or to 2.
Yeah.
I read a book. I think it was Tim Ferriss. What are his books? Tools of Titans. What's the other one? Tools of Titans and.
This is your world.
No, he did the orange one. It was Tools of Titans. I don't know. Anyway, he interviewed one of the executives at Google, and the guy's like, one breath. Just take one breath.
That's where you're starting.
Yeah. If you find yourself agitated, one breath.
It's a good starting spot.
So start where you are, and with the visualization too. Visualization can be a hard thing to do for some people, and do it the way it comes up for you when you sit down and close your eyes and start to visualize. And if you can't visualize colors and specifics, just kind of start where you are.
And there's another part of this that I think that pops into my brain, Craig. Can we say that people are going to suck at this at first, but also they're probably going to try this when they're really stressed out
Yeah.
for the first time.
That's probably a good point, too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
How,
Yeah.
I mean, think about that.
And, that's
how well do you do something the first time? We just talked about. How well do you do something the first time when you're already stressed out? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Yeah, yeah. And so we talked about the box breathing, but you can do what we call tactical breath, and that's where you don't do the holds. So you'd still breathe in that 3-part breath for 5 seconds and out for 5 seconds. And if you do several of those, then it'll put you in a parasympathetic state. It'll tap into your parasympathetic nervous system, and it will relax you. And there's actually science behind that.
It's a lot of science.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I didn't mention. The average person breathes 16 to 20 times per minute. Okay?
Okay.
And
That's
those folks are probably breathing up into the top of their chest and not utilizing the full
That
breath.
sounds like a little bit, not a lot.
That's a lot.
16
16 to
minutes?
20
16
times per minute's a lot. Yeah. And so if we're breathing that much, it puts us into a fight, flight, or freeze state of mind.
Really?
Yeah. So if we're walking around all day long in a fight, flight, or freeze,
Well, you got to explain that. That sounds weird. Well,
you
I'm
might
not
do a
buying
better
that.
job of that than me. But the fight, flight, or freeze is when the amygdala's triggered,
Yeah.
And if we're walking around that way, then we're in that heightened state. We're in that
Because of our breath?
Because of our breath. Yes, absolutely.
How so?
You can put yourself. It's just the way the body works. So when we breathe slowly, like I'm describing,
Right.
it automatically relaxes us and puts us in a parasympathetic. It taps into our parasympathetic nervous system.
Well, what I'm trying to break down with you to make it believable and understandable, you just said that people walk around breathing a lot. I guess 16 times in a minute is a lot.
That's on the average too.
It's on the average, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, when you get stressed out and you're driving, I bet you take a toll or a study when people are driving on the highway.
Probably a lot higher.
Probably
Yeah,
higher.
Yeah.
It probably is if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
So the point is that you're saying your parasympathetic system, which by the way is the brain and the where the serotonin and the dopamine and all the emotions and it pops out the cortisol. I mean, there's a lot of science and things that kind of go on in the brain deriving how we feel. So you're kind of saying that people are breathing a lot through the day, add probably a little bit of stress in there, and their amygdala, their system is firing off. And I want to make that believable. Like that seems hard to believe. And maybe it's above our head to explain.
Well,
does that make sense?
Is it above our head to explain? Probably so. I don't know. But when we breathe that way, when we breathe quickly like that, I mean, when you're breathing that way, you're in a stressful state, right?
Right.
And so if you're breathing that way naturally, it automatically puts your body in that stressful state.
Okay.
It's hitting your sympathetic nervous system. Is that right? So the parasympathetic nervous system relaxes us,
Okay.
right? And then I think it's the sympathetic, right?
It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I want somebody smarter here than us to be able to do that. And here's why. Because there are systems involved that we're touching on, and I just think we're not knowledgeable enough about the brain. And by the way, who is really?
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
But what I know a lot about with anxiety, again, you have a little bit of terseness with your boss or the traffic at work or on the highway on the way to work, or when you see the trash that's left in your living room, you become anxious and probably breathing more short because we know when you're in panic state,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get any air. So much so that when people are in a panic attack,
Yeah.
they will pass out.
Yeah. So if you think about how you breathe in those states, how
Right.
do you breathe? You breathe. It's fast, right? It's
Like,
labor.
to exaggerate it, it's very short.
Yeah. So if something happened, if Neil came in and said, "Oh man, I was just in a car accident," what would you do? What would you say to him? You'd say, "Take some deep breaths." And the reason you do that is because it relaxes you,
Right.
right? So if we're walking around breathing heavy and breathing quickly, it's obviously going to put us in a more heightened state.
Yeah. That's just cool because I didn't think how.
So we can actually trick our body. I could put myself into a more heightened state just by breathing quickly and
Right.
heavily.
Right.
Or on the other hand, if I'm in that state
And you want to calm down.
I can relax by doing the opposite.
Yeah.
Taking those
Yeah.
deep breaths.
I just didn't realize that it is actually as, I mean, all day long.
Yeah. So
People are feeling that
our
way.
natural thing too, and you mentioned driving in a car.
Right.
Well, there's actually a thing called email apnea, right?
What?
So if you're sitting at a desk,
Email apnea?
when we sit at our desks and work on our keyboards or our
Right.
computers, we tend to hold our breath. and not breathe.
Really?
Yeah. And
Like a
you think
computer
about
game.
that consciously. When next time you're over there working,
I will.
think about it. Because when
You
it got
noticed
called to
that?
my attention, I noticed I was doing it. So now as I'm working during the day, I'll consciously make sure I'm taking a couple of good deep
Dude,
breaths.
guys, those things are real. And I'm thinking about video games. You know, you forget to blink. And so my eyes, when I have a longer video game, excursion, which I do from time to time. Actually, I haven't done it for a long time. Your eyes are dry.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it.
Right.
So the same thing when you're feeling a certain sort of way. Your freaking parasympathetic system has just exploded. And you don't know that parasympathetic system has done
Right.
this panic to you. So yeah, that's a big deal. That's a pretty neat. That's a
Yep.
pretty neat way of thinking about it.
Yep. So we got breath control, positivity, using that worm process, and visualization. So did you want to go deeper on visualization?
Yeah, I think so. Because this is honestly one of the ones I suck at. I don't do visualization well. I never have. I've always been able to breathe very well. Like I found out through my training and just I think even just as I don't know when it started, but I would always just when I'm stressed out, just take that deep breath. Not any box and not any big deal, but just being able to breathe. I always liked the way that I could chase a butterfly out of my chest or something,
Yeah.
But visualization, I don't like using this one.
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, is it okay if you use one and not the other one? And how,
Like
what
I said,
works
you
for
can
you?
use them independently.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can
There
use
you
them as tools independently.
'Cause the
But when you're meshing
visualization's
them
one that-
together, there's two types of visualization. There's mental projection, and that's where we sit and visualize ourselves doing something like achieving our goals or the things I talked about earlier. Then there's mental rehearsal. So I've been training for this Seal Fit 20X, right? And that's this 12-hour event out in California, an event that Mark hosts.
Of pure pain
Pretty much.
terror.
Yeah.
and
So,
agony.
so when I'm training for that event, I'll visualize myself. I'll visualize the instructors being there, or I'll visualize myself running in the surf or whatever I'm doing, and that is a form of mental projection. So, Tiger Woods, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Tiger Woods and his dad would do mental rehearsals. So when he was a kid playing golf, they would pretend that they were at Augusta, and the crowd would be around, and the azaleas and all that stuff, and the smells and everything like that. So if you're actually doing something and visualizing, then that's a mental rehearsal. Whereas if you're just sitting in a meditative state, visualizing it, that's mental projection.
True story. I said I don't use visualization, but I actually played out the whole scene and scenario. Don't think I did it with my buddy Adrian, but he was there. I think I did it a little bit with him. Multiple times kind of rehearsing and doing exactly what you're describing.
Absolutely.
With visualization skills.
Yeah.
When I was going to ask my wife to marry me.
Then you were doing a mental rehearsal.
Right? That's exactly
Were you asking Adrian to marry you?
No, I wasn't asking Adrian to marry me. He's my boy. I was asking Lisa to marry me.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, when I was a kid, I had to give a speech like in the 4th grade, right? And my dad said, write your speech out, memorize it, and then pretend you're up in front of the class giving the speech. That's visualization.
It is.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny. I'm glad we did that. The little detour, if that was a detour, because honestly, and I find this with therapy as well. A lot of times people come to therapy, through my eyes, right? And they want this skill or that skill. I'm depressed. Give me some skills to manage that, and give me some skills to manage anxiety, or give me some marital skills and whatever. Like, listen, I'm all about skills. I think they're great and whatever. But you know what I find a lot of times is when I describe the skills, people have used them already.
Yeah.
But it's not routine, it's not practice, it's not managed in a way where you increase your skill level. So it's just very intermittent.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, these big four and this visualization, you come back to it, you come back to it, you come back to it, and it becomes more purposeful and then more ingrained, and then your skill level increases. Does that sound fair?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you can sit down and think about doing something and actually get better at it.
Right.
Yeah. So there was
the athletes do that. Or is that where you're going?
Yeah, that's
with
what
it?
I was going
Yeah,
next.
yeah.
There's a study about these guys shooting free throws.
Yeah,
And they broke them up into
crazy.
3 groups, right? And took a baseline. And so for 6 weeks, one group didn't do anything.
It's really trippy.
One group sat and just visualized themselves shooting free throws.
Right.
And one group went out and shot free throws.
I'm going with the shoot-'ems.
Well, the shoot-'ems did win, right?
Okay, they did.
They improved 24%.
24%.
But the visualization guys, 23%, Chris.
Really?
Yes.
Just about as much.
Just by thinking about it. Just by thinking about it. There was a POW in Vietnam, and the way he got through the camp was he visualized himself playing golf.
Right.
And when he got
he could play golf.
He shot in the 60s his first round.
Are you kidding me?
No.
That's
a true story. Yeah,
that's a true story.
So visualization works, man. There's definitely something.
And just
to
for
that.
people that aren't golfers out there, to shoot a 66 is insane. I'm trying to get under 100 strokes when I shoot around.
It's crazy.
And when I get close to 90, I'm having a good day.
Yeah.
So to pop down 30 strokes by just visualizing
just
it.
Visualizing
that's
for that
crazy.
many years. Yeah. So the fourth thing, you ready to go on to fourth?
Yes, sir. Let's hit number 4 in the big 4.
The fourth thing is micro goals. So micro goals, breaking down the big things into small little bite-sized increments. You know, earlier you mentioned the Navy doing something to improve the pass rate. So they did this study on these guys, on the ones who actually made it through. And they're like, because they want to increase that number.
Right.
And they ask them, what do you guys do? And I think everybody had their own things, right? But every single one of those guys had one thing in common. And that one thing is they chucked it all down, So when they woke up in the morning, the only thing they had to do was make their bed. Once the bed got made, they just had to get to breakfast. Once they got to breakfast, they just had to get to lunch, and so on. So if they looked at the whole 8-month thing, it'd be like, holy cow, I got 8 months of this crap.
Right.
But focusing on just getting to lunch or breakfast or the next evolution, every single one of them.
This is a huge deal. I mean, in therapy, we talk about, breaking things down into small pieces. And I think this is actually in my book, if I remember correctly, Craig. I talked about that.
Yeah.
Because listen, guys, it's impossible. You put so much pressure on yourself if you just sit there and think, man, I got to go to, let me do the Navy SEALs first, and then I'll make it more real life. I got to go to breakfast. They're going to give me 5 minutes to eat. I know I'm not going to get that much to eat. And dadgum, then I got to go ahead and get my shoes on. And they gave me no time to do that. And so my shoes are going to be all screwed up by the time I get to the beach. Hell, they might fall off. So I'm sitting there, with no shoe on, running in the sand. I mean, I already got a blister on my foot, and I'm hungry now. I know I'm going to be hungry, and I have to run a mile that way. Like this is ridiculous. These guys are jerks. I can't believe they're going to make me run a mile. And then I know what's going to happen because we're right by the beach. Where are they going to put me? They're going to put me in the water, right? And the water, I mean, we're in California, man. This water's cold. I'm going to be freezing my ass off. And I've just ran a mile with no freaking shoe on because I didn't have any food in my system either, by the way. So when you kind of visualize that day in the first minute that you're awake, ching, ching.
You're gone.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Exactly.
I'm not going to make it anywhere near the water.
Exactly.
I won't
right.
even get the breakfast eaten. You see,
Mm-hmm.
It's a big deal when you just think, no, I just had breakfast. All I got to do right now is simple. All I got to do is get as much food in my belly. This is the goal.
Yep.
I want to stuff it and eat it as fast as I can because I know they're not going to give me that much time, and I'll get enough nutrients in my body. That's all I got to do. Let me get as much nutrients in my body right now, and that's it.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
crazy different perspective,
That's the one thing they all had in common, man.
right?
Was breaking it down like
Now
that.
think about this. Oh my gosh. You want to have a child? Well, okay. Well, I got to start making more money because, I mean, kids cost a lot, right? You ever done calculations of diapers, Craig? and formula? And oh my gosh, it's a lot of money. And so I've got to get this promotion that's coming up. And now she said she wants to have a baby. Well, there's college, for crying out loud. I mean, how are we going to afford college, babe? Have you thought about this? Do you know college prices in 20 years is probably going to be about 7 times what they are now? If you do that calculation, Craig, you can have a baby?
Never.
No.
That's right.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. You never be ready.
Right? And we do this in life. We project our fears out to the world. We tell our own fortune through an anxious lens, back to those automatic thoughts, through insecure states of mind. These all flood into our mind when we're trying to do something like think about, can we have a baby?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how real this stuff is. And I gave you 2 examples of SEALs and having a baby. I I mean, can you think of how many ways this comes out in people's lives?
Yeah.
It's constant.
Yep, it really is, man.
So break it down is something that I talk about a lot in therapy world. It is too much to think the big picture. You just think sometimes, in recovery, we talk a lot about that. They say 1 day at a time,
Yep.
staying sober.
Yep.
Well, sometimes you're 1 hour at a time. And sometimes all it is this next moment. My goal for the next moment is to be sober. That's a powerful reframe that when you get into your mind. I'm sorry, I feel like I just took over this fourth one. I just get excited about it, my friend.
No, that's good. It's good. Those are all good examples, and they're all 100% true. And being able to break things down into those bite-sized chunks is huge. It really is.
I mean, people feel so overwhelmed, Craig,
Yeah.
with their lives and get anxious. I feel like, with the way they're living and the experiences that they're having. Depression aside, but they still feel hopeless. And anxiety, a whole nother condition, they still feel worried. And I'm sure the listeners of this show really want to hear some things about how to kind of get through all of that. And really, thank you for being here and teaching us and working with us with this, because when you put these things together, it's amazing how you can really be adept at dealing with what seems to be so overwhelming in your life.
Yeah.
Right.
How much time we got? We got a little bit more time?
We got time.
Okay,
10,
cool.
15.
Because what you said
We're
there
at
was
53 minutes.
what you said there is great. These skills are great. They could each be used independently, and when you mesh them together, you can really use them to get through some challenges, whether it's doing 100 burpees or painting your daughter's bedroom. But me sitting here talking about it, me and you talking about it for 55 minutes is nobody's gonna be mentally tough from listening to this.
Oh.
It has to be trained. You have
All
to train.
right.
So we talked about training the breath, right?
Right.
So when I'm training my breath, when I'm sitting there doing that box breathing practice, I talked about obviously that's a breath practice, and I'm developing that witness. But as those thoughts come up, Chris, I can run through that worm process. I can practice that worm process as thoughts come up in my mind during the breath practice. And I also mentioned that I practice my visualization there too. So really those first 3 components of the big 4 can be practiced in your daily breathing practice.
Okay.
The fourth thing, the micro goals, we go out and look for challenges to practice that. So
okay.
So we mentioned burpees earlier, right?
No.
Yeah. So that'd be one example. If I said
Some people might not know what a burpee is, actually. Why don't you tell them what a burpee
go
really
Google
is,
a
honestly.
burpee. Yeah. So a burpee is an exercise where you're basically standing and you go down into a squat.
You bend your knees.
You bend your knees, put your feet your hands on the deck, you kick your feet back, you do a push up, and then you bring your feet back up and you start back you jump back to the starting position.
Yeah.
But when you jump back to the starting, you actually jump
up.
like a jumping jack almost and clap your hands.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
They're
things
hard.
Suck. They suck. Yeah.
They really are hard. You're combining squats, a push-up, and jumping jack in one movement.
Exactly.
It's really, really good, though, y'all.
If you did a number of those burpees, that would be a physical challenge. And so what you would do in that case is you would continue to watch the breath, because if you're doing burpees, what's going to happen?
Get out of breath.
Well, your mind's going to go in the crapper too, right?
Okay, yeah, I'm going to get frustrated. Yeah.
But if I'm controlling my breath, I can control my thoughts. I can run through that worm process and control my thoughts. So once I put myself back into a positive mindset, I can visualize myself doing those burpees and really crushing it, right? Really having good form, really having a good jump at the end. So I'm using that visualization. And then I begin to break those down, Chris. And I might do 10 burpees before it starts to suck.
Okay.
So maybe my goal in the beginning is just to do 10, right? When it starts to get bad, maybe it's just to do 5 more and then 1 more. And then maybe my goal is just to squat down and put my hands on the deck. And then my next goal is just to kick my feet back. And then my next goal is just to lower my body to the floor.
Right.
You see what I'm doing?
See
So
what
I'm
you're
breaking
doing.
it down into those small micro goals.
I'm not going to do 10 burpees anymore. I'm just going to do the first movement.
I'm just going to squat down. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I got to do right now.
Right.
And all I got to do is kick my feet back. And so we're breaking it down into those small chunks. And you can do that with anything. You can do that with burpees. Sometimes.
Well, and back to your thing before we lose it, right? You started out with the goal of doing 10, but then when you got to 10, you started breaking it down, and you did another one by only saying, I'm going to crunch down, and then only by saying, I'm going to kick my leg out. But you've just done 3 or 4 more burpees, right?
And maybe my big goal is 100.
Whoa.
But all I care about is squatting down,
Right.
kicking my feet back. Each
Right.
one's an individual movement, and that's
Right.
that's my only goal at that
And you
point.
know what happens when you break things down like that? Each time you do it, you got a little success.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
remember
You
writing
got a little
about that
win
in my book, right?
Absolutely.
And you feel good about it.
Yeah.
I went further than what I intended to go, and I feel good about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds silly when you're talking about just bend your knees and kick your knees out.
Yeah.
But, dude, when you've done 10 already and you're really trying to push a little bit, you feel so much better. Think about running. It's the same thing.
Same way.
Right.
When I'm running long distance, I'll pick a tree out or a telephone pole,
Right.
and I'll tell myself all I got to do is get there. And when I'm there, I'll pick out. I just got to make it to that car.
Well, hold on. Before you go to the car, you just celebrated the tree.
Yeah.
Like, Dad, I just crushed it. I went to the tree.
Yeah. Right.
I wonder if I can get to the. Well, let me pick. Now you go to the car.
And it could be my goal's the next step.
Wow,
It
so that's pretty micro.
It could get that granular though.
Yeah,
It could.
absolutely.
So we mentioned running, we mentioned burpees, but it could be anything. You mentioned an ice bath earlier. It could be something like that, and it doesn't have to be anything strenuously physical like that. It could be if you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody.
Hey, that's what I was going
when
to.
you were practicing with Adrian about asking Lisa to marry you.
Right.
Maybe your only goal was to get down on your knee.
Right.
Maybe your only goal is to extend your hand.
Right.
Open the box.
Right. Well, because I think we've talked about this before. I know this stuff with you, Craig. So we're talking about the crucible, right?
Yeah.
These are things that you're setting up for yourself.
Yes.
Let me make it applicable in another way, and just say, when you're married, you have a lot of stressful things going on, and you have a lot of your thoughts that you have, but don't say.
Mm-hmm.
So part of what we want to do is the same thing here, right?
Right.
When you want to improve your relationship, you just begin to breathe, calm yourself down, then you begin to. What was the second one? Visualization was the third one. What's the second one?
Positivity.
That's right. And you think about this event in a positive way, and then you visualize maybe I'm gonna say some of these thoughts that I have to my husband, and then you go through and break it down. I'm just gonna ask him if I can have a conversation. That's it. Wow, I did that. And then you go through breaking those things down to trigger yourself into what you might not have normally done in the first place, which is have a wonderful conversation about something really important that's emotionally challenging.
Yes.
How cool would that be if you apply the Big Four to a simple conversation with your spouse that otherwise you wouldn't have had?
Right. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. So we think about mental toughness in terms of physical things, right? We've talked about Navy SEALs and burpees but anything, it's really your whole life if you think about it.
It really is, yeah.
I had to tap into some mental toughness to come sit here on a Facebook Live, to be honest with you.
For real?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
So,
What do you mean?
Just controlling my breath and thinking about what I want to say and being positive, not knowing who's watching out there.
Yeah.
So everything in life can become a practice at that point.
So it's funny. Maybe thank you for sharing that, and maybe we can say that. Listen, the things that we're stressed out about in our lives, other people are stressed out as well, more than likely. Now, you and I did this show for a year and a half, and when we started, it was definitely weird. Remember the first time we recorded, and we turned the microphones off, and we're like, "Whoa, like holy cow!" It was like, and before we turned it on for that first show, it was like, "Dude, where's this gonna go? And how's this gonna be? Like, people are gonna listen to us. This is vulnerable."
Yeah,
but in a big way.
It really is.
And right now, after you've done it for a year and a half, I was surprised, and so I want people to understand, for them not to be surprised when other people are anxious about something they're feeling, whatever it might be. Because this Facebook thing, which, listen, it's new. I mean, we got cameras. I don't even think you've done the cameras with us before.
Yes, it's a new thing, right? Absolutely.
And then I mentioned China. We're in China.
Yeah.
This is intimidating in a way. But so that you can calm yourself down, and maybe Craig's revealing, you literally did that this show.
Yeah. And the point I want to make about mental toughness, and I think I have, is it's not only physical stuff. So I mentioned earlier painting Vivian's room. So I'm going to describe that to you, and then we'll see where we are.
Okay.
But painting a room, man, makes me anxious. But dude, she was so happy about doing this. Daddy,
Aw.
when are we going to paint? Daddy, when are we going to do
Yeah,
this?
yeah, she's
And I'm like,
excited.
this is really important to her, man. So I need to make this a good experience and not get irritated and, and pop off or whatever. So, dude, I would just control my breath, to control my anxiety about doing it. Whenever I thought, oh God, I got to paint, I'd go through the worm. I was interdicting. All right, stop that. You got this, man. This is going to be
Right.
awesome. This is going to be awesome. Maintaining that positivity. Then I would visualize she and I painting. I'd visualize us looking at it finished.
Cool.
Checking the room out. And then Chris, I broke it down into micro goals. Well, all I got to do today is go to Lowe's and buy some brushes and some paint. When we got home and started, all I got to do is tape the trim around that door right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got to do right now. All I got to do now is tape the trim around the baseboards.
Yep.
All I got to do now is paint that little section of the wall right there, from the door to the other side. Now all I got to do is paint this section. And dude, it was a slam dunk. And she actually took a brush and wrote, "My dad is a superhero."
Oh my God.
in paint on the
Wow.
wall. Yeah, I took a picture of that.
How
man, a picture of it.
cool.
So it was awesome.
Absolutely how cool.
Yeah, it was a good experience. So I use these big four skills to help.
paint a room.
And it sounds ridiculous, right?
No, it
But
really
man,
doesn't.
I'd rather play in a
That's-
fire ant nest than paint a bedroom, dude.
That's the point that I want to say. I mean, listen, I'm not mechanical, and I will do this with my, when I'm changing, the oil or something different. Not changing the oil because I'm familiar with that, but I changed it to TPC sensor or something like that in my Jeep, and for me it was deep mechanical work. For a mechanic, they're probably like laughing their ass off right now because it's a couple of bolts of wire. You unplug it, you plug it back in.
Yeah.
But for me, I had to really I'm going to slow down. If this takes me all day long, I don't care. And I'm just going to open up the hood and find the TPS sensor. That's all I want to do right now.
Yeah.
So whether it's working on a car or if you're intimidated about painting a room or having a conversation with your spouse or driving because you have anxious phobias, right? Sometimes this we have conditions of anxiety and depression. This all applies to. Yeah, I think we've done a good job to say this applies pretty broadly.
It does. It applies. It applies broadly,
Pretty
and
cool.
the more we practice it, the more we program our own minds. We talked about programming the subconscious earlier.
win.
Yeah. And so I was listening to a guy the other day. His name's Chad Wright, and he has a podcast called 3 of 7. And he was a SEAL, but he's an ultra runner now. And he was talking about, he was on a podcast, and these guys were interviewing him about being strong in his mind, mentally tough. And he's Christianity's a big part of Chad's message. And these guys said, well, do you have like Bible verses or mantras you go back to when things get tough? And he said, nah, man. He's from North Georgia. He's like, nah, man. That North Georgia accent. He
Slow
He said, it's just who I am now. It's just who I've become.
Right.
And I thought, that's pretty powerful.
Right.
Because his mind is just programmed as such. His subconscious, that's who he is in his subconscious.
Right.
And he don't need to rely on some of the things we've talked about now in order to push through, because that's who he is.
To piggyback off of last week's show, you can create new automatic thought process. That was the name of our
that's
show.
Cool. I'm gonna have,
Challenge your automatic
I'm gonna listen
thoughts.
to it on the way home. This is
Challenge your automatic thoughts. And we made the point, and we just followed up and doubled down on the fact that you can create new automatic thoughts that absolutely serve you better. Like you're empowered to control the emotional experience that you have day to day to day. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Closing thoughts, Mr. Graves, and take us out of here, or give us some closing thoughts, and I'll take us out of here.
I can't think of any closing thoughts. I think we covered what I wanted to cover, and it's good to have a conversation with you. Good to be back.
Nice to be back.
Yeah, man.
We'll have him back in a couple of weeks, but I hope this show has really helped you to kind of realize, like I said, piggybacking on what we've been talking about, because we're all about, providing information on how to manage emotions, and I feel like people get really intimidated by this stuff. And I think the more and more you listen and the more and more you think about this stuff, the more and more empowered you become. So keep working at it. It gets better and easier even as you go. So thanks for listening. Craig, thanks for coming back, and I guess we'll see you guys next week.